it just means Bitcoin's going to go up a lot more than you can possibly imagine. And I look at this and think, that's great to look at the upside, and we just get lost in the ethereal nature of that, to tell you the truth. And it doesn't make any sense, because in my head, I think Bitcoin should be valued in the billions of dollars. If everyone understood Bitcoin to be what I understand it to be, then I think we would have Bitcoin today in the realm of billions of dollars, not hundreds of thousands of dollars or 100,000, sub 100. I'm like, this looks like the greatest opportunity I've ever seen, because once people really understand what that future value looks like, to me, and it's a fair value accounting measure, or net present value calculation, I look at this and think, well, Bitcoin should be in the billions of dollars today if they understood and the world operated the way I think it should, which would be infinitely better than what we've got, or exponentially better. But the flip side of Bitcoin going up dramatically, and this is to your point about the memes where property prices just continue to crash relative to Bitcoin, if we flip that and inverse that chart, property prices are going up. And the reason why property prices are going up is basically twofold. It's an inflationary effect, but the thing that's not mentioned that we've danced around is that our governments are debasing our currency to the tune of 7 to 10% per annum. And this is why property traditionally has gone up at 7 to 10% per annum, depending on what country you live in. It has basically mirrored the amount of money that they've printed every year. Now, is it causation or correlation? Take your pick, but the numbers look irrefutable. And the reason, and this is the problem that we've got to deal with on a personal level for us ADIQers, is I'm earning more money on a per annum basis, but I'm feeling poorer. How does that work? Why is that happening to me? The reason that's happening is because although you may be getting a 5% increase in pay per annum, the money and the inflation is debasing you to the tune of 10% every year. So all of a sudden, I'm now down 5% per annum, which means in a 10-year period, I've probably lost 50 to 60% of my purchasing power. And so although I started on 100K and now I'm earning 150K or 160K 10 years later, the cost of living that used to cost me 100 per year is now costing me 200. And it feels like I'm getting poorer. The only way to insulate yourself from that is to protect yourself from debasement. So the only thing that's not denominated in Aussie dollar, Canadian dollar, US dollar, choose your own adventure with whatever jurisdiction you're living in, is, and they're all the same. Every country has this problem. It's just that the US is the best at it, and it's basically out the scale of who abuses it the worst. The only way to protect yourself from that debasement of money is to go into a closed system where there is no debasement in Bitcoin. And so then you just let time do its thing.
What's the real, bringing it all together in a way, or trying to, it's such a massive topic, obviously, to get your brain around, but what's that real hurdle rate? Because this goes back to, like, we're at the S curve. Like, this goes back to deflation. This goes back to all these things we've been talking about, where it's like, well, hey, Bitcoin guy, you just keep holding your Bitcoin forever. Like, you're not doing anything for the economy. And look, it'll just be deflation, and it'll just be a famine, and no one will produce anything because Bitcoiners are just sitting on their Bitcoin, hodling their Bitcoin. What is, do you think the real hurdle rate is 60%? Because again, the fiat, like the printing, everything that's going on, like, is that the hurdle rate you look at? You have a business, you talk to a lot of high net worth people, business owners, et cetera, et cetera. Is that how, because to me, that's the big thing. I think the past year is you have a lot of people talking about that more, which I think is, you see Bitcoin miners now putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet to a larger extent, right? They're raising money to actually do it. The MicroStrategy thing, we've been kind of going around this whole circle and this whole talk, which is phenomenal. But I think it's where does that end? First, is the Bitcoin hurdle rate right now, do you look at it at, hey, 60% CAGR? So like, that's my hurdle rate in terms of what I'm going to do with my capital. And is that how you're kind of looking at it? And then also, is that where you're at a point of like, okay, now it's down to 10%, maybe it's a couple years from now, or 10 years from now, or whatever it is. And now it's at 10 or 20%. So now, okay, now I'm going to go start doing these productive things with society, whatever, buying more businesses or buying a multifamily, apartment complex or something like that. How do you look at those things?
There are a number of stories that I'd like to share that I think will shed light on this. Recently, and talking to a lot of Bitcoiners, there are projects that captivate us, from whether it's an inspirational perspective, hope, a need to be in a social construct where regardless of what your investment criteria is for an investment, something captivates you on an emotional level and you make an emotional investment in that person, in that product, in that service, in that company, whatever it is. So this fear that people have about, oh, well, no one's going to spend their Bitcoin and everything's going to fall over is just absolutely complete nonsense. That's not how the world works. We're social creatures. We want to be around friends and family. We want to support people who are pursuing things that are important to them. One of the things that I look at and think, and give a shout out to Jeff Booth here with Ego Death Capital. As a family, we've invested money with Jeff, and I've got to say I'm very skeptical that he can outperform Bitcoin. Like, to me, I think you've got to have not only a 50% risk-free return, but you then want a 30% premium in addition to that to make up for the risk that you're taking on that investment. But for me, I look at this and think Jeff Booth is the best of us. He represents, to me, the best in us as Bitcoiners. He represents hope, change, and opportunity. And the thought of being able to invest alongside him and his team, like I look at that team, there's Jeff, there's Preston, there's Lynn, Nico, Andy, like it is just a dream team. And I think if anyone can bring to fruition the promise of Bitcoin, I think it's that team. And, prepared to take an inferior return to help bring Jeff's vision for the world to market and support the companies that are actually going to build out the future that ironically is actually going to support and underpin our major investment in Bitcoin. I look at that and think, although it's not a logical decision, that is an informed decision where we want to support the best in the industry to help achieve their dreams and passions and bring to market what is going to be beneficial for all of us. And I look at that and think, we all have an option to do that with what we do. So we're all allocating, basically everything we do in life, whether we want to admit it or not, is basically allocating capital that we think is going to maximize our outcome. Now, what people fail to understand is, and this is probably going down a spiritual route, but I think it's really important to discuss, because humans are basically, we are very complex creatures in that once we get past our needs, like our physical needs that are met, then we are satisfied on a completely different level. And if you look at the Maslow's needs hierarchy as a great way of shaping how things come about and what motivates us, when we have nothing, then we're really focused on security and making sure that we've got enough food. But once our needs for food are met, then we want to have love and connection. And how do we get that? Well, we do things in a social construct. Now, in order to satisfy those needs, once all of our physical needs are met, we're prepared to make investment decisions with an inferior rate of return if it allows us to meet the social construct or the needs that we want to pursue up that Maslow's needs hierarchy. And this is where I think that it's a bit of a moot point, that to think that the world's going to stop because everyone's just going to hoard their Bitcoin and no one's going to spend it, just absolutely flies in the face of how humans actually work. And I think it's a complete misunderstanding of what motivates and drives us as creatures.
Bitcoin being the new petrodollar. What are your thoughts on this? The Henry Kissinger play of, 52 years ago, whatever it was, and him basically, getting the Saudis making the deal and running the world basically, hey, we're taking off gold and oil is the new game in town. And the dollar is linked to oil. Now, seemingly, because this is the segue from what we just talked about to linking it to the dollar to Bitcoin. How do you see this playing out in terms of, again, you have these camps of, oh, Bitcoin's going to strengthen the dollar and it's, yay, government or whatever. And for lack of explanation, I guess. And then you have, hey, it's going to take out the dollar and in short order. And, where do you kind of see this shaking out over time?
If you want the answer to that question right there and you like that spicy clip, check it out here. Come on. We'll see you in there. But if you want the full interview in its entirety, all the spicy clips put together, and you're not going to want to miss it, believe me, then check that out here. Come on. We'll see you in there. Do it.